It's a dark, cold night as the war rages on between your kingdom and another for reasons you were never told or bothered to listen to. Two bickering lords, no doubt, but the pay was good enough and the food was warm, so here you are. At least you're stationed in a castle, reasonably safe and sound against even a wizard-backed siege. Thankfully, tonight is mostly quiet, cloudy as you patrol the top of the castle walls. The only trouble you see is a storm in the distance above the nearby woods. Flashes of crackling blue lightning, but far enough away that the storm will arrive after you can hit the barracks, and then it's somebody else's patrol in the rain. You circle the castle once, twice, 3 times before you realize that storm is far closer than you imagine, now amongst the woods. A swirling, dark cloud is leaving trees splintered in its wake as it rushes towards the castle. A shrill, grinding noise shatters the quiet night as the storm hits the castle walls, stone shredded as easily as wood. The screams of the dying, the whirling of metal on metal, and the crackling of lightning fill the air as the swarm consumes the castle. There are many horrific war machines created in our very own world. When at war and with magic at their disposal, in fantasy worlds, the weapons of war can be even stranger and more dangerous and wilder. Wizards fling fireballs like artillery pieces. Cavalry of griffin riders take to the sky for aerial supremacy. Dragons operate like nukes with legs and claws and fangs. When faced with a fortified position, to most the answer is to lay siege and break the will of the defenders. To others, the answer lies in thousands of bladed discs crackling with lightning. The siege cloud, the blade storm, the ninja swarm. Let's talk about the Shredstorm. So, what are we going to be covering? In this episode, first we're going to talk about what a Shredstorm is. Next, we'll dive into its origins or try to figure out the possible origins could be for the Shredstorm. After that, we'll explore how I rebuilt the Shredstorm for the 2024 edition of D&D and how they fare in combat. We'll close out then with some ideas about how to add the Shredstorm not only as a monster of the week, but as part of an ongoing campaign. The Shredstorm joined the D&D family with the Monster Manual 3 of 3rd edition, and that sadly is it for our storm of ninja blades. What Shredstorms are is the logical and horrifying intersection between constructs and swarms. Mindless and always neutral, a Shredstorm is a swarm of thousands of bladed discs enchanted with electricity. Each disc is a magically animated adamantine saw blade, roughly the size of a shuriken, that is to say about 4 inches in diameter and weighing about 2 ounces, that spins at tremendous speed. Essentially, it's a swarm of shurikens, a ninja star swarm that crackles with lightning. It came out in 2004, but that screams 90s to me. Shredstorms are constructs designed for warfare, specifically to breach enemy fortifications and then kill everyone on the inside. Brutally simple, that's what they are and that's what they do. The image in the Monster Manual 3 is of a horrific black tornado of these things. That stopped me as I was flipping through the book. Its name, however, that's what made me read the entry. I love the name Shredstorm. It conjures the exact image of what this construct is and does. There's just no initial mystery here or interesting background. The thing is, normally when I look at a monster, I'm looking for something to get my teeth into, some sort of hook to really talk about. The problem here is there's no initial mystery here or interesting background. The Shredstorm is a construct. It's like a golem, but one designed for sieges. They are to breach enemy fortifications and eviscerate all defenders inside. Very straightforward. They include the construction rules, so it seems like they're pretty common knowledge. Like anyone can build these things, or at least anyone with the magical capabilities. Nothing in the entry about who uses them besides commanders. So no kingdoms, just anyone can really use these things if they have the magical capability to do so. However, here's what caught my eye. A magical ingredient in their creation that allows them to fly binds them together into a cohesive creature that can be commanded as one by its creator. That's the unique thing about the Shredstorm. It's a construct swarm. That's really unusual. Usually constructs are just one body. But in this case, it's thousands of constructs. What's this magical ingredient? For constructs, in 3rd edition, the monster entry would often include a construction section, so crazy wizards and the like could make their own. Thankfully for us, the Shredstorm did include that section. First off, creating the quote-unquote body of the Shredstorm, which I'm assuming is thousands of adamantine saw blades, requires 15,000 gold spent on adamantine. So pretty straightforward here with that ingredient. Second, you take that adamantine and forge the blades from the raw metal. Once again, pretty straightforward. In order to do the actual creation and animating of the construct, you have to be a 13th level caster with the craft construct feat. It's important to know feats work differently in 3.5 than they do in 5th edition. 3.5 feats offer massive customization with complex interaction between the feats, requiring you to build/combo feats together in order to become very potent, and often feats were character defining depending on which feats you picked. 5e feats are way more streamlined with a focus on impactful choices rather than intricate combos of feats. Some 3.5 feats focused on crafting, allowing the user to make anything from wands to rods to constructs so long as they had the feat, the magical capability, and the materials. Craft Construct, the feat, stated that creatures with the feat can create any construct whose prerequisites they meet. Enchanting a construct takes 1 day for each 1,000 gold in its market price. The Craft Construct feat states that creatures with the feat can construct any construct whose prerequisites that it meets. Usually, those prerequisites are spells or spellcaster level. And in our case, that's going to be 13th. Back to the Shredstorm, according to the construction section, what you need are the spells Fly, Gies or Quest, Greater Magic Weapon, Lightning Bolt, and Limited Wish. With a cost of 85,000 gold, it would take 85 days to construct the Shredstorm. Specifically, there's no mention of a special material beyond adamantine, which is not to say adamantine's not special. Dark green, jet black, or dull gray in appearance, adamantine is an exceptionally hard, durable, and rare metal that requires exceptionally hot magical fires to forge. Weapons forged of adamantine can easily shatter objects, while adamantine armor can negate any critical hit against the wearer. Even better, adamantine is also known for its ability to hold and channel magical energy, making it easier to bind magical effects to the metal, i.e., enchanting them. Adamantine makes perfect sense as the basis for the Shredstorm, not only because adamantine blades will be great at chewing through hardened forts to siege a position, but they can also take powerful spells, and the prerequisite spells are some pretty potent spells. Now let's take a look at those actual spells. As a swarm, a Shredstorm, it doesn't have legs. It's just a bunch of spinning blades. To move a bunch of spinning adamantine blades working together in concert, they need to be able to fly, thus the fly spell. We call this spell just Gies in 5th edition. In D&D 3.5, many powerful constructs, especially golems, required the Gies quest spell to be cast at the end of the ritual to bind the construct's purpose. I would count a CR8 Shredstorm as a powerful construct that needs its purpose to be hard-coded in because you really don't want these things just running, amok. Back in 3.5, Greater Magical Weapon is a spell that temporarily adds an enchantment bonus to a weapon, making mundane items magical or boosting existing magical items, while allowing temporary weapon properties like, flaming, holy, to be added to the weapon as well, or armor. It's different from Magic Weapon in our current edition in that it could add a greater level of magical enhancement. To me, this is the initial spell that starts the work, to lay the foundation for all the other spells to hook onto. It's a very basic level spell, but I think it is fundamental. It's the spell that everything kind of builds upon. The Shredstorm uses electricity to help kill its targets when slashing just isn't enough. The spell Lightning Bolt is really, really good option for that, especially since the Shredstorm can also project lightning. It's just perfect. In D&D 3.5, Limited Wish is a weaker but more common version of Wish. In crafting, Limited Wish doesn't create constructs directly, but it's crucial for crafting complex ones. I would say certainly that the Shredstorm is a very complex construct, being a swarm of thousands of bladed discs crackling with electricity. Now, one of the uses Limited Wish does is material generation, letting you create the necessary components from raw materials, such as stone for weapons. When it comes to material generation, I don't think Limited Wish is being used for adamantine. Honestly, you're already getting a bunch of adamantine as it were. Why would you be using the spell in crafting to make more? No, I think Limited Wish is being used for another rare resource. Rare enough that it has to be magicked into existence. I cannot even tell you exactly the rabbit hole I went down trying to find the right mineral or magical substance for the Shredstorm. Ultimately, within the Forgotten Realms, there is a hard, dark metallic stone known as Lespeel. We would call it lodestone in the real world. It's basically a natural occurring magnet. Though it holds no magic, Lespeel possesses a natural property to attract lightning, especially if mined from a particularly potent vein. This affinity for lightning makes Lespeel useful in manufacturing of magical items and affixing enchantments, especially those tied to electricity, magnetism, or both. I think it's Lespeel that makes a Shredstorm a swarm. It's the magical ingredient in their creation that binds them together into a cohesive creature that can be commanded by its creator. With its potent magnetic properties, I think Limited Wish forges Lespeel into the adamantine blades, almost like in runing it in. That way, each blade is bound to the others with magnetism so it can operate as a swarm to siege a fort or appear as a tornado. That's my theory anyway. No matter what this magical ingredient is, however, I just don't want to meet one of these on the battlefield. The description for what they do is eviscerate, and that is 100% accurate. As a CR8 medium swarm made of tiny constructs, the Shredstorm operates a bit differently thanks to being a swarm and a construct. For a collection of tiny, angry discs, its ability scores aren't anything to write home about, save for its dexterity, which swarms tend to have high, and its constitution, thanks to being made of adamantine. With a standard AC and hit points for its CR, Shredstorms are surprisingly resilient thanks to being both a swarm and a construct. First, it has resistance to all the basic weapon damage types. Now, look at all the immunities it's going to have. Lightning, poison, psychic are completely off the table. On top of that, there are very few conditions that can actually affect the Shredstorm. Frankly, crowd control overall is going to be pretty hard against the Shredstorm. Besides immunities, the Shredstorms have blind sense, so if you're nearby, it can find you. It also has a 90-foot fly speed, so if it knows where you are, it can get to you. And finally, the Shredstorm has the Siege Monster trait. Dealing double damage to objects and structures, thanks to being a swarm of adamantine blades, this always means that it can just punch its way through barriers to get to whoever it wants to. Honestly, you kind of need a wall of force to really stop it. Just make sure you completely surround it, otherwise it's going to find a way through. This is my first swarm, so let's talk about what makes swarms special in 5th edition. Looking at the other swarm creatures in the 2024 Monster Manual, there are basically 3 major defining aspects of a swarm. First, and most fittingly, is the swarm trait. Essentially, you get 3 things out of the swarm trait. First, the swarm can occupy another creature's space and vice versa, which is going to be pretty critical for another trait. Second, the swarm can move through any opening large enough for a single member of the swarm. Now, given for the Shredstorm, a single member is an adamantine blade 4 inches in diameter. That means they're going to be able to slip through doors, small gaps in windows, or between plates of armor. Finally, the swarm can't regain hit points or gain temporary hit points. The swarm acts as a single entity, but in the end, it's still a collection of creatures, so it can't be healed, and then by that logic, it can't gain temporary hit points. The second swarm creature trait they all have is distraction. Distraction has 2 aspects to it. First, any creature concentrating on a spell with the Shredstorm occupying its space, which it can thanks to its, the swarm trait, has disadvantage on Constitution saving throws to maintain their concentration. Given spellcasters have the capability of dealing the damage types that deal full damage to the Shredstorm, making their life harder seems pretty ideal. Second, and more importantly, any creature with the Shredstorm occupying its space must subtract 1d4 from all attack rolls. Basically, this increases the Shredstorm's AC by 1d4 against the creatures within, the creatures that are going to swing at it with melee weapons. When it comes to actions, the Shredstorm has 2 of them. The first action being the aptly named Shred, the blades of the swarm striking out together at a target. All swarms have this style of melee attack, dealing slashing and lightning damage in the case of the Shredstorm, but if the swarm is bloodied, that is at half hit points or lower, it instead deals half the amount of damage. Which makes sense. Hit point damage to a swarm is killing members of that swarm, so it does get weaker as there are less members of the swarm that can contribute to the attack. As for its second action, as a construct given life, in part due to the lightning spell, it makes sense that the Shredstorm can generate its own lightning bolt. This gives it a range multi-target attack, even if it is on a recharge. Given the straightforward nature of the Shredstorm, combat with one is also going to be pretty straightforward. As a construct made for war and the battlefield, Shredstorms have one goal, and that goal is what's given to them. Now, that goal is usually to go into a place and kill everyone there. Other times, it might be make a hole in the wall so the army can breach that hole, and then go inside and kill everybody. A Shredstorm is not an out-of-the-box thinker. A Shredstorm is capable of getting to where it needs to go, as there are few things that are really going to get in its way. First off, a 90-foot fly speed lets the Shredstorm really move around the battlefield. The swarm trait allows the Shredstorm to find the gaps and then seep into an otherwise sealed location. Siege allows it to punch through walls or barriers if it can't find one of those gaps. Once it gets into a location, once it breaches the walls, The Shredstorm wants to get to the most dangerous target and shred it, while the target's going to have a harder time dealing with the Shredstorm thanks to its distraction trait. Rinse and repeat with a few lightning bolts thrown around for good measure. It's going to find the next most dangerous target and shred them, and then the next one, and then the next one. Being a war machine, I don't see a Shredstorm stopping until it's dead, its commander says stop, or its goal is accomplished. Being a war machine, especially a mindless one, the Shredstorm is never going to be the villain behind the curtain or the evil tyrant looking for world domination. No, let's treat it and its stories like the weapon it is. The first story idea I had for the Shredstorm was it being an old war weapon, like a minefield after the end of the war that was never decommissioned and just left out there. Given it is a siege weapon, let's say many Shredstorms were sent to attack a city towards the end of the war and left in ruins, but because it was the end of the war, they were just left out there. Left out there with the order to attack anyone they came across. Those Shredstorms have killed looters and anyone else that has tried to reclaim the city. The story could be that the party has been hired to clear out the Shredstorms out of the city so it can be properly reclaimed. The trouble being there are a lot of Shredstorms in the city, and they tend to, pun intended, swarm the party. This is going to force the party to figure out how do you take out a large group of these at once? How do you deal with all these Shredstorms? Perhaps they could find a way of, some sort of explosion or some way of dealing damage to a large group of them at once. Perhaps they can find the builder of the Shredstorms looking for a weakness to exploit. Maybe they can even track down the old commander who gave the order for the city to be destroyed to basically command the Shredstorms to shut off. A big bad has a powerful fortress. To assail it from the front is a suicide mission. What the party needs is to breach the defenses of the fortress somewhere else so they can get the element of surprise. That's when they hear about the Shredstorm, a construct with adamantine blades that can punch through those defensive walls, that can help them create a gap into the fortress. As an added bonus, a Shredstorm can cause all sorts of havoc once it's inside the fort, allowing the party to have a really, really good distraction as they move about. They just have to get their hands on a, horrific weapon of war. Easy. The journey to acquire a Shredstorm could be the story here. Either tracking down an artificer to make a Shredstorm after gathering the needed material, or finding a decommissioned or even one still active that's out in the wild and trying to figure out a way to control it. Ideally, trying to control it without shredding them too much in the process. The classic tale is a powerful war machine that developed a heart and a consciousness thanks to the people around them. Now, I know what you're thinking. Sometimes adventures seem to be the ones that need to, develop the heart and the consciousness, but we've all had parties that took a small, maybe adorable enemy and adopted them against their will. What if that small, maybe adorable enemy is actually a collection of 1,000 spinning blades of electrical death? Maybe still adorable? At some point, when exploring the ruins of an old castle, the party encounters a Shredstorm, and maybe it's damaged or something, but it imprints on them, and then follows the party around like a very, very dangerous lost puppy. A boon in combat, less one out of a fight since, it's, once again, 1,000 spinning blades of electrical death that no one wants near their town, village, castle, or honestly anything they want to keep intact. Maybe the party has to teach and train the Shredstorm. It's been active for so long, it's developed a rudimentary mind. How do you go about training a war machine? Maybe the party has to teach and train the Shredstorm. It's been active for so long that it's developed a rudimentary mind. How do you go about training a weapon of war into something more? A Shredstorm is not a perfect hunter. Don't get me wrong, incredibly dangerous against a known target, but it's not a hunter-killer. Its only notable sense is blind sight up to 60 feet, which isn't nothing, but it is perfectly avoidable. The story idea here is a lower level party has come across a lot of runes in a jungle, and unknown to them at first, there's a Shredstorm lurking about. Stuck in the middle of the jungle, the party has to avoid the very dangerous Shredstorm as they try to escape. Since it's mindless, the party could lure it away, maybe even ambush it, lay a trap, something. There's plenty of tricks that they can try to avoid this. Since it is mindless, the party has a lot of options it can take to try to avoid it, maybe ambush it, maybe lure it away, find some way of dealing with it as they try to escape. All the while, it's still a really dangerous threat that they really can't take head on. A bit more horror themed here, as if the Shredstorm wasn't terrifying enough. What about a Grey Goose scenario? Basically, a specially made Shredstorm was created by an insane wizard that is capable of basically reproducing itself with enough raw materials. This special Shredstorm could attack a castle and make a half a dozen more of these things. And then more, and then more. Maybe if you're kind, the replicated Shredstorms don't replicate themselves, it's just the special one, but maybe they do if you really hate your players in your world. These replicated swarms, and they are swarms, not just one, but groups of these, could lay waste to cities, letting the Shredstorms absorb the material and increase the size of the swarm dramatically. What if the swarm realizes it could eat a mountain? What if the swarm realizes it could eat an entire plane? I kind of like the Shredstorm conceptually. As I said, they're the logical intersection of constructs and swarms, that trope of the unstoppable swarm of tiny robots. Mechanically too, they live up to that level of horrifying. They deal 5d6 damage per round, and with a fly speed of 90 feet, you're not going to get away from them unless you have some special tricks up your sleeve. Doors won't help, walls won't help. Realistically, your only hope is to split up the party and pray that the spellcasters can nuke this thing down in time, and that it doesn't decide to, shred the wizard in the meantime. And I think that's just neat, and I hope you do too. In the description below, I have a link to a monster stat block for the Shredstorm updated to the 2024 edition of D&D, ready for you to unleash upon your players. As we are a growing channel, if you found this interesting, please leave a like and a subscribe for all our future videos. It really does mean the world. Let me thank all of you for your time and wishing you all the best until we meet again for our next monster.